This is Between Classes, a Qurtuba Islamic Academy production. Coming up in this episode.
It's a very hard job, and a lot of the difficulty of journalism is not something that you can photograph or, put in a movie or something like that. It takes a lot of mental strength. There is no contradiction between my Muslim identity and my journalism, because for me, journalism is an act of telling the truth, and there's no contradiction there to being a Muslim. I think that, where people's expectations, of what journalists should or shouldn't do, that's when things start getting a bit muddy. You don't even know if they were journalists. They're Hamas operatives. And it's been going on for over, and so it's been a very difficult experience, I think, for many people who care about press freedom, to reconcile how people you were otherwise allies with can have this blind spot. So organizations like the IPI, we've been working with Al Jazeera for many, many years. Al Jazeera, corporate member of the IPI.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Hanaan Akoojee
and Ayesha Abubaker.
Welcome to the Qurtuba Islamic Academy podcast. Today we are interviewing a world-renowned and special guest. Her work spans various media outlets, from the humble beginnings of Fordsburg.com to co-founding Daily Vox with Azad Essa. She was a journalist at the Daily Maverick and the editor-in-chief at the Mail and Guardian. Her current roles are at the International Fund for Public Interest Media and the International Press Institute. She was also given special mention by President Barack Obama, acknowledging her amazing hard work at the Young African Leaders Initiative at the University of Johannesburg. Sister Khadija Patel, Assalamu alaikum. It is an honor to meet you.
Wa alaikum salam, and it's an absolute treat for me to be here. Looking forward to speaking to you both today.
Sister Khadija, you are born and bred in Mayfair, your hometown. Tell us the day you woke up and you knew you wanted to be a journalist. Is it as glamorous and exciting as it's made to be on TV? How did you discover your passion, and who has been your inspiration in pursuing this career?
So gosh, there's a lot to say there, but so first of all, it's definitely not glamorous. It's a very hard job, and a lot of the difficulty of journalism is not something that you can photograph or, put in a movie or something like that. It takes a lot of mental strength. That's why a lot of journalists struggle with mental health issues sometimes, because you're often seeing, some very difficult things. You're listening to very difficult things, but you're also having to handle yourself in very difficult situations. So it's a difficult profession for many, many reasons, but, I still think that it's the best job in the world. For me, it really is. It's the most special job anyone can do, because for me, I describe journalism as touching the world. It allows you to understand the world better. It allows you to help the world understand itself better. But it also allows you to be within the moment of things really happening and moving. And it's a very significant feeling of connectedness. And I think that's what journalism gives you. So I think I was 11 years old when I wanted to be a journalist, or at least when the thought first formed. And that's because my English teacher at that time was a journalist as well. So she had been a teacher, a high school English teacher, and then she left teaching to go back to university. She did journalism at the University of Cape Town, and then she worked actually as a sports journalist. And this is kind of like the early to mid-90s, when South Africa was quite a dangerous place, actually. So her parents refused for her to work, as a political journalist, which she wanted to do because it was quite dangerous. So her compromise with her parents was that she would do sports journalism. And by the time that she had come to Joburg to work as a teacher at my school, she had now a very rich career in sports journalism. And so she would share with us, clippings of her work. She would tell us about, the adventures she had, the people she had met. She would show us photographs of herself with all of these famous people like Imran Khan. And, so she opened up a new world for us. And I think nearly everybody in my class that year wanted to be a journalist just because of how inspirational. She really was inspirational to us. And I think that, the reason her influence sticks with me for so long is, I was like, what, you're 11 years old? You're in grade 6. And she refused to teach us the syllabus, right? She said, this is really dumb. You're far too smart for this. And so she was like teaching us like high school poetry, like the stuff that that were matric set works is what we were doing as 11-year-olds. So she was, she was quite a personality. She taught, she would use film and music, to help us understand things like metaphor and symbolic language. So she was amazing. And she was, I think, definitely the first spark toward journalism for me. Yeah.
That is really amazing because you said you were 11 years old.
Yeah.
So you followed your childhood dream.
Not quite, because by the time I matriculated, like this commitment to journalism kind of dimmed. So I didn't study journalism. I studied languages and literature because when I matriculated, I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I really wasn't sure. And I thought about doing languages because I was good at languages and thought, I could be an interpreter, right? But I also really enjoyed economics and just thinking about how economies work. And I knew very little about it except that, I would listen to economists on the news and I would just be fascinated by their insight. So I was torn between doing a BCom in economics or a languages degree. And it was my mom who said, you know what, a bachelor's degree is just 3 years. Do the languages degree. And then when you're done with that, you can do the economics and you can have both and then you can go from there. And so it was my mom's encouragement for me to do languages because that really changed my life for me because it was exactly what I was meant to do. And even my postgrad wasn't in journalism. I mean, my postgrad training is in social linguistics. And I kind of came back to journalism almost by accident through blogging. So I have no formal training as a journalist. So it kind of, I guess it's like the draw that I couldn't resist in the end. But so I got there eventually, I guess.
Sister Khadija, as a Muslim woman journalist, how do you manage to maintain objectivity in journalism while respecting your personal beliefs and values, especially when covering sensitive topics?
So objectivity in journalism is at the moment, I think for the last 5 years, it's a very hotly debated issue around the world, everywhere, but particularly in the US. In places like South Africa, we kind of have had this discussion and this debate for perhaps a bit longer because we've had to deal, with issues of transformation a lot more consciously. So it's still a hot topic in the US, for example, and, it's alienating a lot of young people specifically. But, for me, there is no contradiction between my Muslim identity and my journalism because for me, journalism is the act of telling the truth. And there's no contradiction there to being a Muslim. I think that, where people's expectations, of what journalists should or shouldn't do, that's when things start getting a bit muddy. And, for me, you have to be guided by the principle of truth, by the principles of accuracy. That's, those more important than this notion of objectivity, because objectivity ultimately is not a real thing because we all have different life experiences, different biases, different psychologies, which affect and influence the way we see the world. And that will ultimately affect the stories we tell, how we tell them, how we see the world. What is better? And, in every newsroom that I've been in and every young journalist I've spoken to, I've always said that, what we strive for is accuracy and transparency, right? And those are the ideals that I think that are better values for journalism than objectivity.
That's a really interesting perspective. For the listeners interested in pursuing their journalism journey, can you please enlighten us on the studying journey? I believe you studied through UNISA. Can you tell us more about it? I also read that you did a bachelor in Arabic. I'm intrigued how it played a part in your writing.
It's the languages degree, right? So I did, I majored in English and Arabic and then sub-majored in French. I went to French school. So at that time, I was still thought that I'm going to be an interpreter, but I love languages. I really, really love languages. And I think that, grappling with particularly literature, and, helps you see the world better, helps you understand the world more deeply. So, I think that, my advice to anybody wanting to be a journalist is to, first of all, not do a bachelor's degree in journalism. There are a few universities in South Africa that offer bachelor's degree. I really wouldn't encourage that. I would prefer young people who want to pursue journalism to pursue a bachelor's degree in something like political science or history or sociology, things like that, and then do postgrad in journalism. So, for example, WITS has a postgrad honors in journalism. I would prefer, I think that it gives you a much better, rounded view of the world in South Africa, and also just heightens your own awareness, and it will shape your own interests, so that when you do eventually get to a newsroom, you know that this is what you're interested in by then. So I think that for me, what is most important, I've always said that I can train a journalist in a newsroom. Right, I can train that journalism is not that hard to teach but what I can't teach is curiosity. Right, so what young people need to have, you need to come with a curiosity for the world. You need to be reading a lot. So this is why I would say, you go and study English, or go and study sociology or history, or any of these things, study economics even, right? And build up a body of knowledge and understanding and curiosity. And that, I think, is most important.
I really like that. How do you feel like your personality influences your career, like in your writing?
It's a difficult question, hey? That's a difficult one. So I'm actually really a shy person. And I'm generally quiet. My sister is the one you would think would be a better journalist than me, because my sister, first of all, can speak to anybody. She can go up to a stranger and within 15 minutes is best friends with them and knows their whole life story, but also knows how they're related to everybody else in the world. And whereas I'm like the more reserved one. So I guess, obviously, dealing with that, was one of, the big learning moments in my career as well, right? Like, because you're picking up the phone to a stranger and saying, hey, so tell me, they said you did this bad thing. Did you do it? Right? Like, as a young journalist, those are the things, that no one prepares you for, right? Like, and just like, whew. So I'm going to phone this person at 8 p.m. while they're probably busy with their family, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I want to talk to you about this. And so those types of things, because I'm an introverted person, so learning to deal with all of that, it's much easier for me now, but only because I have the experience, I've done it.
Developed
right? Because I've done it before, but when I started my career, I remember almost being crippled with anxiety sometimes, right? And I would put off doing my phone calls right to the end, because it was right. But other journalists, who are very natural people's people, who are out there every day, mixing with people. And so, so I'm a very, I'm a different kind of journalist because my personality is different. But I've also, alhamdulillah, I've been able to connect with many people through my career and build relationships. And that has been really special. And that, that helps you also to develop your work personality, right? And your professional profile in that way.
When you started up and you mentioned earlier you were interested in journalism in the beginning. And I read on the internet that you started blogging and then you gave up at some point. Today, you've been published in multiple South African magazines and international magazines. You're recognized on Arab News as the first woman, first non-European American, and first Muslim to ever become the chair of IPI, the International Press Institute. Your journey is inspirational. What advice can you share with aspiring journalists on how to achieve their dreams?
So, my advice to any young person, not just young journalists, would be, the world is tough. You have to have a clear head and you have to be true to something, right? There's, kind of like Western psychology will say, be true to yourself. And I think as Muslims, that's actually antithetical to because we're not true to ourselves, we are true to our deen. Right? So I think that has to, you have to have something to anchor you, right? Something that grounds you, something that makes you understand yourself better, no matter, what you're doing or where you're going. For me, that's my family, right? Who root me in who I am. And, different people have different experiences. Some people, might not have families or might not have good relationships with their families, but I think, you find that thing that helps you connect to something that is more than yourself. And I think that is my message, is don't be fooled into thinking that you are the center of the universe and your success depends completely on what you do and how well your matric results are going to be, or which university you get into. At the end of the day, it's only up to Allah, right? Any success we have, is really a favor of Allah. And that's it, right? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how well you've done or how poorly you've done. If Allah wants something for you, you're going to get it. So remember that, and remember that Allah will never forsake us as long as we have Iman, right? So make a conscious effort to renew your Iman. It's difficult because I'm telling you, I get so caught up, right, with work. Sometimes I'm traveling so much, I'm making my salah like a robot. I won't even know, did I make salah now? Didn't I? Oh, yeah. Right? Sometimes just pause and renew your Iman for yourself, not for the world, not for somebody else. And because I think that ultimately is what we have, to be true to that.
As part of the International Press Institute, the IPI, you are intimately aware of the major challenges journalists face worldwide. Almost 100 journalists have been killed in Gaza. You met Wael al-Dahdu, and it's now been 2 years since Shireen Abu Akleh was assassinated in the Jenin refugee camp. Al Jazeera is being blocked in Palestine, and TikTok is being banned in America, and there's a lot of bias in the media. How is IPI addressing these challenges of press freedom? And what can students like myself do to change this hopeless situation in Gaza?
So first of all, it's never hopeless. For as long as we can talk about it, for as long as we can raise awareness about it, it's not hopeless. It's never hopeless. But so organizations like the IPI are grappling with a really difficult situation, in that we have basically a situation where this many journalists have been killed, and there's been absolutely no accountability for it. There has been absolutely no reckoning for this. Instead, we've faced countless examples of officials and some even Western journalists saying things like, we don't even know if they were journalists, they're Hamas operatives. And it's been going on for over, and so it's been a very difficult experience, I think, for many people who care about press freedom, to reconcile how people you were otherwise allies with can have this blind spot. So organizations like the IPI, we've been working with Al Jazeera for many, many years. Al Jazeera, corporate member of the IPI. And so we've been working with Al Jazeera for many, many years, and we awarded Shireen Abu Akleh our most prestigious prize in New York 2 years ago posthumously. And for us, what is essential is for us to continue to establish dialogue among ourselves, among journalists, to ensure that there is, first of all, awareness about the contradictions in how press freedom is being discussed, and in this context, that we making space as well for advocacy within this, and that also we are part of various instruments to try to force accountability here. There are various activities at the moment, ranging from possible legal recourse to civil recourse to bring justice for these journalists. And so, participating in all of these sections to try to bring something. But I think that this has been a very difficult moment for global journalism and for a global organization like the IPI, because you're faced with basically two worlds. And when you travel from the global south, which is, basic places like South Africa or like India, or, and you go to the global north, which is basically Western Europe and the US, and you understand how, the conflict, the occupation is seen so differently, so starkly differently, that, it's almost impossible to build a bridge between the two narratives. So for me personally, I'm alarmed really at the state of journalism. I've had some friends of mine lose their jobs in major international corporations for questioning the editorial policies of their organizations. So, there's been a real life cost for many people, right, who've spoken up. So for us, really, and for me personally, what this is really is a moment of opportunity to enforce what we call a decolonial journalism, to unshackle journalism from a more colonial, imperial lens, to make sure that it serves more than an elite in society. And I think that this is the moment that we have to make it real. And I think that there are many, many people around the world who feel similarly.
In the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said something to the effect that when you see evil, you must stop it with your hand. And if you cannot do that, then you must stop it with your tongue. And if you can't, then you must at least feel bad about it in your heart. So we have to commend people like Dr. Naledi Pandu, the South African ICJ lawyers, and journalists like yourself who are speaking truth to power. In this time, being a part of an ummah of over 1 billion people, we cannot get one drop of water into Gaza. So the ayah that gives me solace in this dark time is La taqnatu min rahmatillah. Do not lose hope in the mercy of Allah. What is your favorite Quranic verse? And give us a backstory.
I mean, it's difficult to think about a favorite. I think at different times, considering my mental state or, what's happening in my life, there'll be a different one. But I think consistently what I come down to is a verse from Surah Yasin. I call Surah Yasin my vitamin Y. Every time when things are going a bit wonky in my life, I need my vitamin Y. The verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. That for me, that is the point of life, right? That what we should be yearning for is to hear that salam from Allah Himself in Jannah. That it's not enough to even yearn for Jannah. There'll be some people who won't get that salam from, imagine being among those fortunate ones. That is the point, right? So, yeah, I think that, sometimes I just, it's such a beautiful thing. Imagine, being in Jannah and completely worry-free and having salam from the most merciful. Yeah, so that sometimes takes me through, the more difficult days.
That's beautiful. As a journalist, you've encountered numerous events throughout your career. Could you share any memorable experiences, interesting, funny, or unexpected stories? Have any of these had a significant impact on you for any particular reason?
I have so many stories. I think the one thing that that I think was formative for me was covering the aftermath of the Marikana massacre. Yeah, in South Africa. On the day of the massacre, I was actually on leave. It was around Eid. So I was on leave for Eid. I usually take a week off for Eid, and so I was just basically following this. My colleagues were all there, and immediately I was like, okay, I'm here, guys, tell me what to do. And the next day I was in Marikana, and I think just, we talk about inequality in South Africa, but when we're sitting in Joburg, in an urban space, it's very difficult to understand what inequality really is until you actually get out to rural areas, and particularly a mining town like Marikana, when you know that most of the world's platinum comes from South Africa, right? And so Marikana, there's this huge platinum mine. And there was a strike, there was a miners' strike, because there was a group of workers called rock drill operators. It's the most difficult job in a mine, and they wanted a pay increase. At that time, I'm not sure what they get paid now, but at that time they wanted 12,500 rand. And so it was an intractable battle between the workers and the mine, and the workers were split because there were two different unions. It was very fraught. Many people were, even were killed, because, rival mines were, killing each other. And then it's just a really horrible, horrible time. And we got there, and it's really humbling to be there. And I remember I don't think it was the first day. So I was, you mentioned my colleague Azad Isa. Azad was working for Al Jazeera at the time, and he had come from Doha as well to cover. So we went to Marikana together, and it was raining a lot. It rained so much that day, and we were in this little hired car, because Al Jazeera had hired a car for him, but it was this little car, it wasn't not even a Polo, a very, very tiny car. And, we were in a section of Marikana with no roads. And basically our car got stuck in the mud. It's bucketing down. At some point, it starts hailing, by hailing so much, where it's like an open space. Like, I've got a picture, it actually looks like snow, but it's hail. And so the car was stuck, and we realized, so it was the two of us plus an interpreter with us, and we realized that if all three of us sit in the car won't move. So it can only be the driver in order for us to get out of this hole, because by now, like, the car was basically sunken in. Like, so the rest of us, okay, we're going to have to walk out of here. And you basically, I went dressed like I was wearing like an abaya coat, right? So like, so long thing, and I was wearing loafers. It was quite inexperienced. Like, today I would like swear at a journalist who goes out like that. And I was wearing, like, I had on stockings, and then at some point, so now I've got to walk from where we were to try to get to the road. And walking through that, like, it's like hail, and it's just mud, right? There's no, and but people's, like, there's an entire informal settlement, huge informal. All the mine workers live there. Most of the mine workers live there. That's why we were there, to just go and speak to people. And there's no toilets or anything like that. And so you're walking through that, and you realize, oh my God, I think that's poo I just walked through. And it gets worse because then my shoes were wrecked, so I had to take off my shoes. I'm walking barefooted in my stocking in this complete pit of mud and human excrement, and I was very perturbed in the moment, but yeah, I think it was formative for me, because, it helped me understand what inequality really means, like what workers' rights mean, the cost of workers' rights, and also to understand what the mining economy is all about, and how mines in South Africa have for a long time been a predatory presence. So yeah, I think that is a story that I soon won't forget. Yeah.
I think that invaluable experience also like forms a part of how you write or who you are today. So like these experiences are important. I think it's really important to acknowledge how journalism requires a lot of effort, and like you mentioned, it can take a toll on your mental health. And there's a lot of pressure. Sister Khadija, when it becomes overwhelming, how do you maintain a work-life balance, and what keeps you going?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest lie is a work-life balance for journalists. It's very difficult to have a work-life balance, and at various times I've managed it better than others. For example, when I was at the Mail and Guardian, I don't think I had much balance at all, and it took a toll on my physical health, right? Like, I became really ill. So I know better, about how to handle myself. I can tell when I'm getting really tired. I can tell when I'm getting really irritable. Like, I'm just tired. Yeah. So, but it comes with experience, and it comes with time to understand yourself and understand what's important. So yeah, it's not something. At the moment, like this week, like I'm working like really hard, like, because I've got a couple of deadlines coming up and things. So I'm working at nights as well, but it's not every day or not every week that I'm doing this. So I try to find a good balance, and yeah, you've got to find things outside of work as well that that give you joy. And I live with my family, so we have many kids in the family, so they drive me crazy, but they also I love them all, so like spending time with them also gives me a lot of joy. And they don't care about what's happening in the news. They're just like, can you just take me for a walk? So yeah, so I think that things like that, my friends, those are things you kind of build up. But also I also really appreciate also just having time to myself to read and just be quiet. And what I haven't had enough time to do, because I've got 2 roles at the moment, is to enough writing, but inshallah soon hope to do more writing. So yeah, I think that just fueling the things that that make you who you are, and just finding ways away from work where where you're not taken seriously. Like, my family will like make fun of me, like even doing this podcast, they're like, why do Qurtuba want to speak to you? My sister's like, I just don't understand, why do they want to speak to you? And I think it's important to have this this kind of presence in your life, because it keeps you humble, and it's very important to realize you're not the most important thing in the world.
Sister Khadija, your tagline is pushing words on street corners. How did it come about and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so I mean, very early on, when I started working as a journalist, and I had to like reconcile myself this idea that you write and you get paid, and so it felt like, I'm basically, so I'm selling words. That's basically what I do. That's my business. I sell words. So that's basically where it came from. It's kind of stuck. Now I can't and now it's my brand. It's my brand. So that's where it came from.
Last year you went for Hajj.
I did, yeah.
And do you feel like a newborn baby? Share with us your most profound moment during your Hajj trip and how has it changed? How has your life changed after Hajj?
It was the most amazing experience. It is, many people will tell you this is going to be the best experience. You think people are exaggerating. But I think that you have to experience it for yourself to understand. Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, the most profound moment was actually getting to our camp in Mina. And you realize how little space you have. You're just like, whoa, okay. No one prepares you for that, okay? You have 1 square meter for yourself. It doesn't matter who you are. So I remember it was really hot the first day. It was so hot. And the aircon in our tent wasn't working. And it was so hot. It was so hot. At some point, the water in the camp also had run out. So we're just like sitting there and baking. And there's just like no respite from this. And the aircon's not working, and the sun is just belting down, and no one knows what to do. It's like, we can't do this. There's 2 girls with us who had climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, I think like 18 months ago, and they said something like climbing the mountain was not as difficult as this. That's how difficult it felt. It really felt like this was really trying because you're in this really confined space. The sun is boiling down, and there's these girls who are really amazing women who climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and they're amazing, they're so inspirational. And then there's somebody else who's the head of something at SASL, and somebody else who's this hotshot lawyer, and there's like 2 doctors and everyone. And sitting there, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter how important you were outside of that tent. Inside that tent, you were all absolutely useless. Right?
Different walks of life.
Yeah, and but also to just realize that what's the point complaining? Okay, we're going to complain, we're sitting complaining. What Hajj teaches you, I feel, is that Allah is in control. Like for me, that was that you have to have plans, of course, but you have to understand as well that we don't control the plan. The success of the plan is Allah's. And Hajj teaches you to accept that, right? The journey that you're on is decreed by Allah. And I think Hajj teaches you in a very beautiful way that acceptance, right? Like, so you can get angry and shout and scream. And maybe that makes you feel better, but does it change the weather? Is the aircon going to be fixed? Right? You can shout at Sahuk and you can shout at your group and be angry at, everybody. But, there's a greater purpose to us being here. And so I think that for me, it was the most beautiful experience. There's so many moments like that. There's so many moments like meeting people from all around the world, like being in the Haram. And I remember one day in Medina, my sister and I were sitting next to, like on this side, we had people from Russia in front of us. And on this side, there were people from Burkina Faso. And I remember I can't remember where. Anyway, I've got it written down somewhere. But, there was this like, the entire world, like people, you saw people from Japan. I didn't even know there were that many Muslims in Japan, right? It was just amazing. It was absolutely amazing to understand that you're just part of this bigger whole, right? And that I think it's beautiful in that understanding that, yes, you're small, but you're part of something bigger. And to have faith in the meaning of that bigger thing, have faith in that sense of the ummah. And that was really beautiful.
Totally. I think it's beautiful that no matter where you're from, who you are, where you're working, like you said, at the end of the day, we're all just servants of Allah and we have one purpose, and that in Hajj, we're there to worship Allah. Inshallah, we all are given the opportunity to go on Hajj.
Ameen.
Now, being a Muslim and being a woman really plays a role in how you experience your career. How do you feel that being specifically a Muslim woman changes the narrative of being a journalist?
In some ways, depending on who asks me, if that question was coming from a Western journalist, I'll tell them that there's no difference, right? Because I don't like to fixate on my Muslim identity, and I don't want that to be what they see first, because I know it's what they see first. My headscarf is always in the room before the rest of me. I know that, right? And I've learned how to deal with that. But yeah, so, for me, my faith is important to me. And, I'll continue to make space for the expression of my faith in my work. I will continue, when I see Islamophobic sentiment being expressed or just some really off things being opposed, I'll call it out. So, for me, being a Muslim journalist and being a Muslim woman here is just, for me, it just like fortifies my ideal for justice. Like there should be justice in the world should be more just, and that's what, I will continue to strive for.
Khadija, I think this discussion has been exceptionally enlightening for future journalists, inshallah, and empowering, and it's very empowering to hear firsthand from a Muslim woman in journalism. With all that needs to be addressed in the world, whether it being global issues or general underlying issues, your voice and your success is testament that this is a career where you can have a voice and make a profound impact. Shukran for sharing your insights and experiences with us.
Thank you both so much. Jazakallah khair.
We could not have made this audio adventure possible without the incredible contribution of Maulana Aslam Raja, Appa Amira Hajjat, and the brilliant minds of the Qurtuba Islamic Academy podcast team. Remember to hit the subscribe button and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. This has been a Qurtuba Islamic Academy production. Stay tuned for more.